The commanders of the galaxy assembled around, looking at a map of Earth that is lighting, each visage that was a mixture of haughtiness, and the little blue planet was called Amusement Earth. Renowned for its antiquated technology and supposedly helpless individuals, for a long time it had been seen from a distance. Categorized as an inconsequential planet without antiquated weapons and without significant military power to pose any danger to Earth, the Galactic commanders hardly justified the resources it required to infiltrate, but interest and a little irritation at the planet's lack of knowledge of its galactic neighbors forced the choice. This backwater world would learn. A commander leaned forward in Lesson 1, his voice brimming with contempt. They continued to depend on projectiles from simple combustion engines, as well as simple battle machines without planets, no advanced energy in the protective shield. It's amazing they haven't used weapons. By now the others had destroyed themselves. Laughed and nodded in accord. According to rumors, Earth's military has unskilled and largely dependent on statistics instead of any actual expertise or sophisticated for them. Their goal was not about technology. A conflict, it was merely a formality. A few elite extraterrestrial troops may manage. They didn't require an armada for the job. A small team for scouting in order to authority and notify Earth's rulers of commander. Their new reality recommended sending a scouting team to see the Earth's defenses up close. Prior to the planet's official declaration defeated it more out of custom. Then the Galactic commander's necessity have to adhere to protocol at all costs. The task appeared to have been decided to be insignificant. That 12 special troops would be a tiny token is more than plenty for Earth. Force in light of their typical invasion scale, it wasn't about losing money. Instead of showcasing authority as the commanders received the orders, talked about their scant understanding of human culture, which they perceived as primordial creatures who held on to antiquated virtues such as courage, loyalty, and give up attributes that were worthless. In a society with superior technology, the commanders discovered human values. Humorous, out of date, and completely pointless in actual conflict with their worlds. Cultures and wars over resources have plagued history. Ideologies and territories appeared only to demonstrate the folly of human nature. The cosmic leaders didn't think about they were ruthless in their perception of Earth's as a necessity. Invasion is a means of bringing. They observed Earth's order in the galaxy. To tie up a loose end, independence planet that need direction and management. If some people had to be killed in order to clarify this point, then, if necessary. The reasoning for it was straightforward. Civilization had mastered the technique of supremacy, while Earth continued to falter as it evolved. One of the senior leaders renowned for his triumphs in numerous worlds discussed. To be clear, the Council is not a fight. This serves as a reminder of who is in charge. Earth's strength in this galaxy will be a quiet conquest. A quick note to anyone else who believes they may reject our authority. They'll comply, or his words, will fall, period. Reverberated in the today. A unanimous ruling upheld by self-satisfied smiles and mental nods. This conflict ended before it even started. The scouting group received an instructive land evaluation. In return, all that was needed for the mission. Use of force. As an illustration of they used their power so easily with the choice they chose. They moved their focus on more urgent issues. Earth is hardly spared throughout the galaxy. Second, they were certain that when their troops returned, they would bring stories of a simple tale of Earth's victory. No one questioned the inevitable surrender. Nobody questioned the plan's outcome. Thought it would be as simple as overcoming any minor, underdeveloped planet. While they observed the reconnaissance team ship gets ready to leave, the commanders couldn't contain their amusement at the leaders of Earth's minds panicking and scurrying without realizing the power falling on them. In their thoughts, the reaction of humanity would be feeble. Maybe even a humorous Earth would be reduced to its knees in a few hours after. When they arrived, the folks displayed their actual location within the alien reconnaissance team's universe, passed through the atmosphere of Earth. Their veiled ship is imperceptible to humans. Detecting systems in the galaxy. Earth's rulers had rejected technology as outdated and originating from their viewpoint. This was more of a journey of exploration rather than a purpose. They needed to be stealthy and landed in a remote location, choosing to stay away from any instant communication with people, enabling them time to examine and validate the commander's presumptions regarding this was a routine for the reconnaissance team. There were experienced warriors on the task. Accustomed to coming across primitive worlds they hardly justified their abilities on. As the squad disembarked, the scanners swept across the landscape, collecting environmental information and signs for categorizing of life, including grass, trees, insects. An animal's Earth was colorful but quite normal. The air in their eyes was brimming with sounds, such as the faint rustle of leaves and the far-off cries of animals to the it. was charming and reminiscent of aliens. There were experienced warriors on the task. Accustomed to coming across primitive worlds they hardly justified their abilities on as the squad disembarked, the scanners swept across the landscape, collecting environmental information and signs for categorizing of life, including grass, trees, insects. An animal's Earth was colorful but quite normal. The air in their eyes was brimming with sounds, such as the faint rustle of leaves and the far-off cries of animals to the it, was charming and reminiscent of aliens. Simpler environments they had experienced, and they found amusement in the past in the notion that a world so preoccupied with its natural environment would be prepared to protect against the might of their civilization while they relocated the group. Turned on a number of reconnaissance tools, their visors emphasized the human distant structures that are indicating them as small, non-threatening homes and farms, and the terrain was inhabited by roads. There was no danger here. The reconnaissance team found no evidence of protection shields for energy weapons or strategic obstacles felt in the Earth's layout like an artifact from a bygone era when combatants engaged in hand-to-hand combat and instead of using cutting-edge technologies and calculated accuracy. They proceeded to scan the markings on buildings, cars, and any humans considered machinery to be antiquated. As contemporary society emerged archaic in comparison to these alien workers' basic engines were grounded. Electricity cables for cars, every element supported their original hypothesis. That Earth was incredibly unprepared. The group used quiet communication to signals traveling effectively and hardly a sound. They were afraid of identifying their tools and instruction were superior to Earth's armed forces. Might envision going deeper into their mission. They noticed a solitary person agreements noting fundamental military outposts, including these showed nothing that would worry anyone. Seems unaware of the concept of a galactic danger or troops who have had training with simple weapons and little tactical equipment, that is not aware of the scope and might of the powers watching them. The crew, doing the reconnaissance, came to the conclusion that the troops on Earth had probably never seen combat beyond minor disputes on they hadn't yet reached their own planet. Understood that their planet was a part of a much larger, greater cosmos full of civilizations that are far apart from their understanding. When the group examined their results, they observed oddities in that they were constructed using human structures. Substances that, by galactic standards, were out of date and insufficient for sophisticated defense. This wasn't a stronghold. It was an assortment of haphazardly arranged constructions that are seldom able to despite a coordinated attack. The reconnaissance crew recorded this. Details about each individual in more detail persuaded of the inferiority of Earth, that the aliens carried on with their silent survey. Documenting each and every item, they noted different human behaviors they saw, watching as individuals went about their routines with a carefree ignorance of the it was nearly an extraterrestrial presence. It's funny that this little planet has this common beings who are totally unaware of the power. There was little hurry as they encountered the aliens. Evidence that humanity even comprehended the idea of a planned invasion. At one of the reconnaissance's points, members of the crew observed a person who seemed distinct from the others. A lone figure was traversing a woody region with a concentrated level of intensity that attracted their interest. He was identified by the team as a potential military figure via a single human's perspective. Presenting a problem still didn't seem likely. They continued to concentrate on this person, monitoring his whereabouts and taking note of his conduct. His acts seemed deliberate. Deliberate in contrast to the civilians they had noticed prior to the peak of curiosity, and the crew observed this figure's movements seeming to have strategic intent. The equipment was basic yet well maintained. His calm and perceptive demeanor, he was not viewed as a threat by aliens, but his actions were noteworthy, and there was something odd about the way he feeling of preparedness that they hadn't found. This guy, amid the civilian population, appeared to be conscious of his surroundings. Alert in a manner that suggested instruction, possibly even experience, in unfriendly surroundings. As the aliens kept watching, they started to think about the potential that Earth may have some people who believed without cutting-edge technologies, have some sort of talent or intuition. However, they hadn't taken this into consideration. Their own consideration was ephemeral. Armor and weaponry were far from superior to any opposition would be at best. It was a final cry from creatures that were just unable to comprehend the reconnaissance's own limits. Team completed their evaluation. Preliminary findings that verified Earth was unprepared, undefended, and its citizens observed the person who had momentarily aroused despite their curiosity in their report. He was designated as non-threatening. Attention went back to the bigger picture. Earth's population would rapidly decline. Brought under control with little effort, No more work was required. Surveillance with confidence in their results, the aliens communicated their first report. Returning to Earth's commander's weaknesses were listed and described in detail. Strengthening the resolve to proceed, very less funding in their ultimate adds that they contained one dismissive line concerning the lone human being. The Marines saw the moving alien figures, traversed the landscape in their peculiar armor with technology that is unfamiliar, yet clearly he had been on a habit of being hostile. Training mission never anticipated come seen something that is not regular for us wild, but they weren't your typical the exact motions of intruders. Sophisticated equipment and utter contempt for their disguise suggested they weren't present. He unintentionally remained out of sight, evaluating their equipment and numbers manner in which they seemed overconfident, unaware that he was there as they looked around them. Probably believing that nobody was able to perhaps have far less knowledge of them, prepared to confront the Marine with calculated his backup alternatives were limited. Firepower, and no way to get in touch anyone without disclosing where he is. His education placed a strong emphasis on patience, tactical benefit, and the component of surprise, none of which these extraterrestrials appeared to must take into account when determining their strategy. Was straightforward, almost haughty, as though they expected no opposition. He observed their sophisticated equipment, but it appears made for simple, overwhelming attacks instead of defensive flexibility or subtlety. He chose to subtly test their awareness, arranging himself so that he might see. He stayed under cover and took a measured shot, his aim and his exact aiming a weak spot in the armor of one alien. When the shot struck its target, the alien staggered and removed its armor, flashing while it tried to adjust in the event of an unplanned attack. The aliens were obviously preparing for the Marine, noted their resistance. Observing their emotions as they regrouped, clearly bewildered. They weren't accustomed to being singled out or confronted. Undoubtedly not by a person using antiquated technology, the extraterrestrials looked around with sophisticated sensors, but the Marine possessed. He had foreseen their tactics, already transferred to a different role, meticulously concealed with organic cover, till he observed them evade attention as they persisted in their frustration-filled search. Apparent, in spite of their superior technology, that they were unable to identify his, where the Marine fired another shot, turning off a portion of their scanning equipment that is clearly departing the aliens. Unnerved, they gathered once more, cautious but unable to recognize the Marine was the target of the attacks. Observed the ways in which they communicate, recognizing how much they depended on he focused on coordination devices. Their communication equipment, after being forced to their ability to adjust and convey visually something they didn't seem to be used to without the use of their typical technology to direct, they made the aliens appear less coordinated. The Marines' observation of every shift in their actions, his strategic with each move they make, their advantage grows, made their excessive dependence on technology, which at first appeared frightening, was turning into a liability. Due of their numbers have decreased, and their formation weakened, the aliens started to move. Wildly, evidently having trouble make up for the loss of the Marine proceeded to use advanced equipment. His meticulous approach never engages directly, but maintaining steady pressure on them, psychologically deteriorating, as well as physically, and meticulously placed shot departed from them, more and more alone and unsure of their self-assurance, deteriorating with every second that goes on. They had come into the mission anticipating to unquestionably dominate, and the abrupt understanding that they might be one human. Being outwitted was obviously strangely. The Marine moved his technique for creating diversions to draw them farther into uncharted land. The extraterrestrials were now functioning at a drawback of not being able to anticipate his motions or comprehend his strategies. They had arrived ready for a simple participation, assuming their technology would ensure victory. But each and every move has been expected at every presumption that they weren't confronting an opponent who is ill-prepared, but an extremely skilled tactician who was aware of the landscape and understood how to use his surrounds. As the final few extraterrestrials fought to reorganize, the Marines noticed that their features were filled with exhaustion and annoyance. What started out as a straightforward reconnaissance mission had evolved into a nightmare. Their arrogance and presumptions, one man broke it with nothing else. Compared to fundamental human training and ingenuity, they hesitantly moved, now cautious of every movement, every shadow, knowing that their technology was no longer able to protect the Marine. Didn't require advanced armor or weaponry to reveal his shortcomings, merely required discipline, patience, as well as the element of surprise. Lastly, as he looked at the remaining, he was aware of the aliens' retreat had been established. He had demonstrated that Earth was less vulnerable than they had believed to be. Technologically less advanced humans were able to adapt, and toughness that these extraterrestrials had never. The Marine encountered this. It was a survival-only situation. evidence of what one expertly prepared a person could achieve versus the aliens apparently possessed superior force. Arrive with the anticipation of a simple. However, they would depart with the understanding that the defenders of Earth where the Marine was far from helpless. Concealed as they retreated, aware that he had shown them that the task was finished. The planet Earth would not be dismissed the idea that its defenders were ready to skillfully handle any threat. And perseverance, as the final alien disappeared, the Marine realized right away that the commanders of the galaxy would get a quite different report from what they had expected, one that would depart from them questioning the planet's strength. They had previously written them down as weak, and the aliens gathered, shocked and unprepared by the sudden opposition that had appeared to be regular. But mission had changed, becoming an annoying and unsettling. Discover their cutting-edge technology that they had been using to numerous victories were demonstrating useless versus a rival who obviously knew how to take advantage of their shortcomings to which they were not used. Such degree of modification from a despite being considered rudimentary, they recalculated with the goal of recovering control because their dignity required it. Leader confronted with the mounting discomfort, one of his colleagues requested a more forceful. They turned on their cloaking as they got closer. Gadgets as well as intense scanners resolved to find and remove the people who had the audacity to oppose them. The alien squad consolidated their position. Definite indication that they were no longer. They underestimated their goal. Proceeded cautiously, depending on their most cutting-edge tracking technologies to eliminate any heat or movement traces, signature or other indication that would show the concealed danger. Yet even with these increased precautions, the Marines remained one step ahead of every search, for he ultimately failed. And every failure undermined their self-confidence by masking tools that had enabled them to, on innumerable realms, invisible, irrelevant in this case, every advantage they believed they had was disappearing. Discredited by their own failure, to the Marines seemed to understand how to adjust. Just where and when to attack, executing every action with precision, exactly what they had at first rejected, since it was now obvious that luck, something much more hazardous, developed as a result of constant training. Frustration increased among the group as the Marine went on to avoid their attempts to be apprehended or elimination. They discovered that brute force was insufficient, but they lacked additional tactics in place of their reliance on supreme strength and progress. The amount of weapons was not enough versus an adversary who knew how to utilize their advantages against them. The Marines' strategies were straightforward but efficient, based on strategy and patience, and the aliens found it difficult to continue to follow the alien leader now. Distressed, decided to divide the team, seeking to improve their prospects of identifying the human in this choice, but only made their issues worse. The Marine, seeing their confusion, used the division, one by one, to his advantage. Isolated team members discovered they specifically targeted their equipment, disabling their shattered formation. They had been prepared for coordinated attacks, but this was something completely different. Survival game where their technology did not provide ease or comfort. Answer: although they are rare, the Marines' attacks were each designed at precisely the right moment. The aliens are now being kept off balance. Clearly nervous, they started to wonder about the information that they were provided regarding this was not uncoordinated. Earth opposition they were up against, they were aware of, not just their strategies, but also their unity and psychology faltering as each member began to doubt, more concerned about protecting themselves than the extraterrestrial squad on the actual mission was never utilized as a source of dread. Vulnerability in their own ranks. Their despair caused them to turn on their surviving high-energy weaponry, intended to eliminate whole clusters of adversaries in a single blow, but these weapons were made for combat in the open, not the delicately managed interaction that the Marine had planned. The energy. Their surroundings were charred by explosions. However, the Marine continued to be evasive. Every futile attempt was unaffected, served to make their location known, enabling the ease of repositioning the Marine. The alien commander, recognizing the mistake, directed them to cease firing, but by that time the morale inside had been damaged. For the first time, the squad fell. They knew what it was like to be the Marine who had been chased, had turned their own strategies against them, changing their cutting-edge weapons and tools into their cloaking gadgets. Liabilities, heavy weapons and scanners had all shown to be ineffectual, and without the element of surprise that remained in them. Only uncertainty and terror. The once aliens were so certain of their superiority now found it difficult to maintain the remnants of their self-assurance. As the alien leader looked over his remaining forces, that he observed fatigue engraved into these, were warriors who were taught to dominance. Although they were humbled in this instance by one person who has never before faced their leader, could sense them directly. his soldiers increasing skepticism the knowledge that Earth may not be the simple victory they anticipated. He acknowledged the change from haughtiness to despair, and a strange and very unpleasant sensation for every one of them. In a last attempt to take back control of the alien, the leader made an effort to rally his men, stressing their obligation to rebuild their self-esteem. But his remarks fell the Marines' unwavering invisibility and new awareness has been infused by presence in them, but with reluctance, for the Earth's defenders recognized Earth was no longer a planet to be defeated in a single day. Not just by a show, the Marine had demonstrated to them that it may be argued that even the most cutting-edge technology could be made ineffective in the face of human tenacity and fortitude, as they, the alien leader, gathered once again. Acknowledged that the mission's goal had changed. What had started off as a straightforward the show of power had become a fight for their lives. They've progressed. Technology had not been able to protect them. Considering human resistance as a reality, the team, once a representation of the galactic dominance, was now merely a group of people who are afraid of each other, one plagued by the knowledge that they weren't unbeatable anymore, their confidence destroyed. The aliens were unable to longer disregard the reality they had undervalued their rival in this species. Planet had the will to combat that went beyond technology, a strength derived from experience-based tactics and flexibility. The alien squad is currently. It was a ghost of what it had been. Diminished, no longer considering Earth to be as a remembrance of the conquering, but the galaxies. The Marines' unpredictable presence had made a lasting impression, one that would have an impact well beyond this. One faced difficulties in whatever they believed. They were aware of power and supremacy. The extraterrestrial leader looked over the remaining members of his squad. Their resolve was broken, and their confidence weakened. They had arrived on Earth carrying complete assurance of a simple victory, confident that their technologies and training put them well above the capacities of any species on this primordial planet, but the Marines shown them to be incorrect, making them confront not just their own shortcomings, but also the extent of human tenacity. The original mission had changed from a straightforward display of authority into a difficult survival test that they had barely survived. The leader was aware. They were unable to pay for another conflict, and every effort to the Marines' outmaneuver had backfired. Every tactical change only makes more weaknesses that his group was currently facing, defensive and attempting to recover control over the circumstance. Their attention had changed from dominance to self-defense, a degrading reversal. The alien leader was greatly troubled by that. He understood that they had to withdraw and return, not as winners but as survivors who are attesting to the unexpected potential of creatures that are undervalued as aliens. As they prepared to go, the burden of after settling on the EXP experience, they would not bring tales of glory back, but with tales of an unrelenting human enemy who had taken away this Marine's minimal advantages, resources, and no assistance had succeeded in take advantage of their vulnerabilities in ways that had stripped something he hadn't imagined possible, putting aside their dependence on technology, and compelled them to engage in combat they couldn't prevail with only brute force. They left in silence, accompanied by a sad admission of failure. The OD leader, who reports to the commanders, would have an alternative message than anticipated. Rather than describing their submission to Earth, they would describe the perseverance and aptitude of a person who had disproved all presumptions. The Marine strategies, although straightforward by their expectations, had been horribly efficient use of their strengths. They had come to oppose them, conquer Earth, but instead had came across a powerful force, one based not on technology but rather on unwavering determination and flexibility. The extraterrestrial leader wrote his report, reciting the specifics with accuracy, emphasizing the Marines' strategic assaults and his operational capabilities. Despite their greatest attempts, he remained unnoticed. Comprised the psychological cost forced the squad to endure the slow decline in their confidence and anxiety. Such a terror had infiltrated their thoughts. They had never encountered him before. Outlined the patience of the Marines' prowess and strategy, and his command of the surroundings in sharp contrast to their own dependence on cutting-edge weaponry. Only his knowledge had been required by the Marine. His self-control and comprehension of human warfare to undermine their objective. The commanders would not, piece by piece, be happy because they anticipated a simple victory in a short enslavement to subjugate Earth to this expedition was intended to be controlled by a formality, a simple demonstration of superiority, but rather than going back with a track record of victories. The team returned feeling humbled and compelled to admit the power of a lone human protector. The extraterrestrial commander was aware that his report would act as a cautionary tale and a reminder that Earth wasn't as fragile as they were. Believed that its defenders, albeit few in there, was something about numbers that could. Not solely determined by technology, the final communication from the alien leader was unambiguous. Earth would not readily give up what they had undervalued this planet, and its inhabitants mistaking a lack of technology progress due to incapacity the Marine had demonstrated to them that he had shown at that level of power wasn't just a question of armor or weapons, but of willpower, tactics, and flexibility. The leader now realized that Earth's defenses, despite their lackluster appearance, were powerful in their own right. On the tenacity and resourcefulness of those ready to battle as the extraterrestrial squad departed, they carried with them the atmosphere of Earth. Them a deep regard for the human, the defender they had met, had made them face their own shortcomings that call into question the presumptions that had appeared indestructible at first. The Marines' deeds had changed forever. Their understanding of Earth is changing. From a straightforward conquest to a planet worthy of prudence and reverence, the alien commander was aware that they can no longer afford to think of Earth as less than, rather. It was now a world characterized by defiance and strength, or evidence of the unwavering spirit of its people, experience that he knew would have a profound impact. The news from the Galactic Command about the tenacity of Marines would spread a warning about a lone human being who had defeated an elite force and came out on top. The alien squad won the battle. Experience had been a sobering reminder that power was more than merely a gauge of the Marines' firepower, had demonstrated that the final decision, your expertise, could surpass even the finest sophisticated enemies, leaving a permanent influence on people who previously believed as they traveled, they felt invincible. Each alien's reflection back on the mission's surprising results and lessons acquired knowledge, and the unquestionable respect they now reserved for Earth, their human enemy, was no longer a simple target for victories but a sign of defiance. Reminder that strength was insufficient on its own. Ultimately, they had lost. Not by a more powerful adversary or a bigger force, but by one person's perseverance who stood as an advocate and refused to give up representation of the power of Earth, and that the real victory was more important than anything else. Earth had asserted.